The people of Mooresville hate Teresa Earnhardt's idea. Tyler Reddick, maybe a free agent. NASCAR and 2311 Racing met in court on Monday. NASCAR also says that officials are looking further into the actions by multiple competitors on the racetrack Sunday. Welcome back to Break Hard. I'm Matt. The news just keeps rolling in on Monday, and we're probably going to have a lot more as we get into the week. So you get a second video today. Congrats to everybody, myself included, because I mean, who doesn't love talking about all the crazy things that are happening? Before we get into some of the stuff I think is going to be coming down the road later this week, let's talk about Teresa Earnhardt, because last Tuesday, the Wicked Witch of the Southeast was delivered a sweep, an 8-0 ruling by the Mooresville Planning Board against her proposal to turn 399 acres of Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s former hunting and farming property in Mooresville, North Carolina, into a tech park. The people of Mooresville do not want a tech park on that eastern side of Mooresville, the more rural side, and the people there want to protect the type of lifestyle that they have, which I can respect that. I think everybody can probably respect that. The eastern side of Mooresville, when you do look at a map, is very rural. It's very green, and that property is probably better served for a nature preserve. Now, I had said in a previous video that it's her property to sell, and I stand by that. It is her property to sell. But if the people there and the planning board don't want to see it changed into a tech park, well, that's their right. They have every right to do that. I'm on board with that. Obviously, the property would have to be rezoned, so they're not going to rezone it. Maybe. So while it was struck down 8-0 by the planning board, it still needs to go in front of the Mooresville commissioners, which it could change there. They basically just use the planning board as like a suggestion for the commissioners. So we'll have to wait and see how it all comes out. No date for that meeting has been set currently. But during the meeting, multiple people, 200 people rather, from the Mooresville community showed up, which is a lot. If you've ever been to a public meeting, listen, if more than like 7 people show up, stuff's about to go down. So something interesting is probably going to happen. I've been to enough public meetings in my life to know that if people are coming in and they're engaged, it's probably going to be a long night, and it's probably not going to be very fun for at least one party there. Teresa, of course, did not show up. She sent a representative in her place. She sent the engineer from the project, Dan Brewer, to answer questions that the planning board would have. Carrie Earnhardt's wife went and spoke as well, and they would like to see it turned into a nature preserve, which seemed to be kind of the general consensus from the people of Mooresville. At one point, one speaker got up and said, "Everybody in here that opposes this being turned into a tech park, stand up." The entire room stood up. So yeah, it does not seem like Teresa Earnhardt is making any friends in Mooresville, which I feel like probably doesn't come as a surprise to most people. Now, she is 65 years old, as I said in the previous video. If she wants to sell it off, I don't have a problem with that. But you know, when it starts to affect the lives and, you know, the quality of life of her neighbors around her, then yeah, it should go before the planning board, which is what has to happen when, like I said, when it rezones. And if the people don't want to see it changed, and the county, or the city rather, doesn't want to see it changed in this situation, then it should stay how it is. Either sell it off as farming and, you know, hunting property if you're looking to get the cash out of the land, or turn it into a nature preserve and, you know, put a Dale Earnhardt trust into it and, you know, allow it to exist as a green space in some sort of capacity. All of that works. But an 8-0 sweep, unprecedented. Typically when people get swept, it's 4 games, it's 2 games. She just got the straight slate, straight ticket, 8-0. Not even a chance. Not even one single person that's like, I think this is a good idea around here. Board member Sean Hooper did say that the proposed tech park was just out of character for the eastern side of Mooresville, more suited for the western side, all those techies and industrial people over there on that side. The more rural side, not so much. And again, I think we all can kind of respect that, especially when you see the map. So we'll have to wait and see what the future of it is once it goes in front of the Board of Commissioners. Obviously, like I said, no date has been set for that yet. Heading from a public meeting into the courtroom, NASCAR and 2311 Racing, along with Front Row Motorsports, met in court on Monday afternoon. They had a hearing set for 2 p.m. regarding the injunction requested by 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports that would allow them to race in 2025 under the new charter agreement, get the benefits of the charter, but not have to sign their charter agreement while they are in litigation with NASCAR. There's also the part that, at the very least, they want an injunction within the open agreement as well to enter open cars, remove the clause that says that NASCAR cannot be sued for anti-competitive practices. They would like that removed so that they can continue on with their lawsuit. Well, they went before a judge. No recording devices are allowed in the courtroom, but we did learn some pretty interesting things once reporters came out and started to say, what was said during this court hearing. One of the biggest things is Tyler Reddick might be a free agent at the end of this season. He has a chance of winning a Cup Series championship on Sunday. And if 2311 Racing does not get this injunction and does not have charters, well, according to their legal team and Jeffrey Kessler, he's a free agent because his contract is tied to having a charter. Same with Bubba Wallace from the sounds of it. So 2311 Racing could have both of their drivers on the open market. Now, I think everybody understands that Tyler Reddick is definitely the more enticing prospect to have out of the two of them, but Bubba Wallace brings a lot of money along with him in sponsorship and media exposure, so both of them are pretty desirable for most teams out there. Another thing that was also said to that, they could be losing their sponsors as well if they don't have charters, because sponsors want a guaranteed starting spot, and they're not going to have that if they don't have the charters. So the judge said he is not going to issue a ruling on Monday. He will have a ruling by Friday. Interestingly enough, the NASCAR State of the Sport typically is on the Friday of the championship weekend, so it could happen during the State of the Sport speech, which would be kind of humorous, all things considered. Also, we learned that from NASCAR's legal team that teams will be receiving about 50% of the TV revenue under the new charter agreement starting next season. That is up from the 25% they've been receiving under this current charter agreement. The teams say they receive about 25%. NASCAR says it's closer to like 35% when you factor in the purses from the racetracks that they own and everything that goes into that. Teams still say that's about 25%. So you're talking about nearly double. That is a great win for the teams. Obviously, 2311 Racing has some other issues outside of the revenue. That's why they're continuing on with this lawsuit. But that's a good jump up for the teams, because previously it was 25%, 65 to the track, 10 to NASCAR. Now with the teams getting a lot more money, that should help them out in terms of operating costs and not having to look for as much sponsorship, or at least as much sponsorship money. Nothing was said in the courtroom about 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports both purchasing charters from Stewart-Haas Racing, but after the hearing, Jeffrey Kessler was outside talking to reporters, and when asked about it, he says that he expects the sale to go through for both of those charters for next season. So expect both of those teams to have 3 cars, assuming that they have 3 charters as well. 2311 Racing's main argument for why they need an injunction is because they need to remove that clause that says that they, can't, that NASCAR, that kind of releases NASCAR from antitrust lawsuits. And they also need their charters so that they can retain their drivers and their sponsors. Obviously, they need to keep their sponsors because that makes them, financially viable to continue on as a race team. NASCAR, on the other hand, says that they don't need. NASCAR maintains that it cannot be anti-competitive because the teams have already signed charter agreements before, and they want charters because they know the benefits of it. So that's why they don't think that an injunction should be granted, and teams should just have to sign that charter agreement. Obviously, the judge is going to have to sift through a lot of this week and hopefully have an answer for everybody by Friday, but it certainly seems like things are continuing down a contentious pathway. During the hearing, apparently, the teams argued that a baseball player just can't become a football player. So the race team just can't become a Formula One team. And NASCAR kind of countered that with saying that you didn't have to invest in NASCAR. You could have invested in like an NBA team or IndyCar, and saying that investing in an NBA team is a little bit of a jab, it feels like, because Michael Jordan was the owner of the Charlotte Hornets and then recently sold off his share, or the majority share, of that team, and is no longer an owner in the NBA. So that felt like it was personalized for the moment here. But after the hearing, Michael Jordan came out and said that he's looking forward to winning a championship this weekend on Sunday in Phoenix, and doesn't seem like he's too bothered by it. So we'll have to wait and see how all of this plays out. On Monday, NASCAR said that officials will look further into on-track actions by multiple competitors during Sunday's NASCAR Cup Series race at Martinsville. I think it's safe to assume that they're probably going to be looking at the 23 of Bubba Wallace, the 1 of Ross Chastain, and the 3 of Austin Dillon. Now, Bubba Wallace's car was taken by NASCAR post-race after the race on Sunday at Martinsville and torn down at the racetrack to find the mechanical issue that caused him to dramatically lose pace in the closing laps of that race and ultimately fade back far enough to allow Christopher Bell to pass him for that, lone point that he needed to make it into that championship race. Bubba Wallace over the radio reported that that he thought he had a tire going down. It appeared that all 4 tires were up when he got to pit road. NASCAR was looking for the mechanical issue that would have caused the car to slow down that much. If you watch the onboard, which I did, he's clearly fighting the race car in the closing laps. Now, is that because there's a mechanical issue, or is that because Bubba is fighting the race car? It remains to be seen. Not jumping to conclusions. We'll wait to see what NASCAR has to say about it. Haven't seen the SMT data from it either. So we'll have to wait and see how all of it goes. Bubba, after the race, was pretty nonchalant about it, being like, yeah, I wasn't slowing down for him. I'm fighting the race car. And he's like, he dives me into turn 3. And I was like, bud, you don't have to do that. Now, we'll have to wait and see if NASCAR agrees with it. On the other side of things, Austin Dillon's got to be sitting back being like, okay, so you can't run through somebody, you can't dump them, you can't hook them, and now you can't even just ride behind somebody? What is this place, a prison? That's what Austin Dillon probably feels like right now, because it seems like that dude just can't do anything right. He just finds himself at the center of controversy a few times this season. Now, it's up to NASCAR to make a decision here. Do they issue penalties for all 3 teams? Do they issue an unprecedented fine to the manufacturers for orchestrating something like this? Neither party is innocent, and this William Byron really did nothing wrong. People want William Byron kicked out of the playoffs. William was just out there struggling on tires. I mean, it's an elimination race at Martinsville. That 2014, that's kind of their MO here the last 2 years, is they're going to struggle, and it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be pretty, and you're not going to enjoy it. It's like watching a rock fight in basketball. You're like, this sucks, but screw it, we're going to watch it. A 39-37 final. Sick. So for Byron, he just kind of rode around. It's the 1 and the 3 that, made that decision to stay behind him because they wanted to be good corporate teammates. Now, does NASCAR want to see that continue? I don't know. I think that's what we're going to have to wait and see and what they have to say. Probably that penalty report, I assume it's going to come out on Wednesday. NASCAR was in court on Monday afternoon. They typically like to take their time with it, so assume that maybe that pushed everything back a day. Jim France was in court today for the hearing. I assume he's going to have a lot to say about the potential penalties for this. Doing a election day news dump would certainly, if you're going to issue big time penalties and everything, would push things under the rug if you want to try to hide it from, the sort of the mainstream media out there. But I would expect it to happen on Wednesday, just because they're going to take their time to really look through this, and they should, right? I mean, I think it's easy to jump to conclusions like some of us probably all have, but ultimately, they need to look at SMT. They need to look at and listen to the radios and look at the behavior of the drivers to make a full determination on this. And I have no problem with them taking an extra day in this situation. But Phoenix is coming up real quick on Friday. So expect some news probably by Wednesday. And then heck, by Friday, we might know what the injunction ruling is as well. And then whether or not the teams or NASCAR will appeal, which whoever loses is definitely going to appeal. I think that's a pretty safe bet going forward. So let me know in the comments what you think about Teresa Earnhardt getting struck down by the planning board. What you think about 2311 Racing, Front Row Motorsports, and NASCAR meeting in court on Monday, and NASCAR looking further into the on-track actions in the closing laps of Sunday's race at Martinsville. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok at BreakHard, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at BreakHardBlog.